Hi, this is Kurt Verone, and welcome to this week's or this week's edition of File or Roundup for March 14th, 2022. Unfortunately, Brad is in court today, and Bill Macarone is in the firehouse, so it's going to be yours truly by myself doing the class this week. So, couple of points up front, something that I always seem to forget at the beginning. Please subscribe. We need to get up to 500 subscribers, even 400, but really we're hoping for 500 subscribers. And free copy of my book will be given out to one of the first 500 who subscribe. So we're on the way, but it really makes a big difference in whether or not we're going to be able to continue to do this. So if you find these useful, please subscribe. Let's get into this week. I wouldn't say it's been a busy week, but it was, a couple of interesting cases. And let me just get to my blog. I did 4 cases this week. I didn't do the normal 5. I used the blog sort of as my post for Monday. But we had actually a case I blogged about last night, Sunday night, so we can talk about that. There was a sexual harassment and discrimination retaliation case out of Norfolk, Virginia. Female fire investigator filed her second lawsuit against the department. And the first one was filed in 2019, alleging gender discrimination in the Fire Prevention Bureau. And then that case apparently settled, but then shortly after she filed it, there was apparently some media attention that was garnered around the first filing of the lawsuit, and the plaintiff in the case, Karen Baca, felt that she was being retaliated against for filing the first suit. And so apparently she's documented the various things that happened to her. And so she's alleging retaliation, whistleblower violation, and we're seeking a few other things in that complaint. And again, it was filed in the same court that the original suit was filed in, U.S. District Court, federal court, but it had some state law claims. So in the current case, what happened was the city of Norfolk filed a motion to dismiss her state law claims based on immunity protection. And as anyone who's been in some of my classes where we talk about sovereign immunity, one of the big distinctions that still exists in sovereign immunity is whether or not, when government does something that harms someone, whether or not the government was acting in a discretionary capacity or a ministerial or functionary capacity. So the court spent a lot of time in looking at that distinction, and ultimately said that the behaviors that Ms. Baca is alleging happened were all functionary or ministerial types of things. They certainly weren't policy setting or discretionary types of behaviors, and therefore sovereign immunity would not be a defense for the fire department, and they allowed the case to continue. One exception to that was, and it wasn't so much along sovereign immunity grounds, but it was really more about the fact that the Human Rights Act, let me get the exact name correct, but the Virginia, the Virginia Human Rights Act has a provision in it that allows someone to get punitive damages, and the court held that would not be appropriate to hold the government and the taxpayers are responsible for punitive damages for a violation of that. So they did dismiss her claims for punitive damages. But otherwise, the case is going forward. There's a couple of federal claims and also some state law retaliation and whistleblower claims. So sounds like an interesting case, and we'll try to keep an eye on that one. In Missouri, we had a firefighter who was charged with arson. Looks like it extended. It extended back to a couple of fires set, or one fire set late last year, and a couple more that were set in February. Again, not something uncommon. We do see arson in the volunteer service, certainly much more frequently than we see in the career service. So unfortunate. We've got a case out of North Carolina. And let's see, it was from the Asheville Fire Department. Female division chief had filed a sexual discrimination and harassment lawsuit. Most of her claims, however, were dismissed, and we've got a copy of the ruling in there, but the case is going to proceed on at least one count. Again, we've got pretty extensive coverage on that, but that's two sexual harassment cases, sexual discrimination, gender discrimination cases that we've got just in the past week that's in the news. And that is one of the biggest areas of liability concern for any fire department right now. It's, according to my data, it's the most likely way that a fire department is going to be sued. So something that we, beyond the specific allegations in each case, it's something that I think all fire service leaders, need to be cognizant of. It is right now looking like that's the most likely way that the organization would be sued. Another case out of FDNY that's pretty interesting, and I was aware of this a while back that it was becoming an issue. And yes, there's two sides to it. I think Brad might have talked about this a little bit. We might have talked about this a little bit last week, but the New York Civil Liberties Union filed suit against FDNY, trying to obtain the release of certain disciplinary records. And I guess a case like this can kind of cut both ways. The question here is whether or not internal disciplinary investigations and the records and stuff associated with that should be disclosable to the public. And on sort of one side of it, you can see why we don't want this stuff cloaked in secrecy. We don't want the inner workings of government to be cloaked in secrecy, because then bad things can happen, as we saw. And this is really kind of an outgrowth of the Watergate scandals of the 70s. But on the other hand, internal personnel matters are typically confidential, and the release of that information can cause leaders and also firefighter unions and firefighters themselves to be less cooperative with the investigation when the information is released. So there's I think a policy issue that's there. And historically, that information in New York, and particularly New York City, was considered confidential, both for police and fire. In the aftermath of some of the issues, particularly George Floyd and some of the other similar related issues, there's a sense that the public needs to know whether or not we have a bad apple or a few bad apples, or exactly what's going on. So, where this is all going to shake out, where the line goes, we'll see. It's going to take some time for this to sort out. But the bottom line is the New York Civil Liberties Union is suing FDNY, trying to get copies of that record. Personally, I do not recommend fire departments change the way that they're doing things. We should be investigating disciplinary matters. We should be documenting them. I'm a big advocate of recorded interviews. That's not to take advantage of an accused firefighter. It's actually to protect an accused firefighter and protect witnesses as well, so that there's no mistake about what someone says during an interview. If someone is simply keeping notes during an interview, it's possible they can take down information, inaccurately, or maybe deliberately misstate what a witness says. And then 6 months later, you have a written record of what you claim the witness said. And the witness says, oh, I don't really remember. So if that's what I said, that's what I said. And now you have bad evidence or bad information in the investigative report. So I'm a proponent of recorded interviews. Again, not to take advantage of firefighters, but to protect firefighters, and also to preserve the integrity of the investigation. And I don't see a case like this as warranting us maybe going more toward less writing, because I just don't think that's the right way to do it. So I think society, the state legislatures have got to really kind of work through this issue and come up with a balance that's going to protect the individual employee rights versus the rights of the public to have access to this. And again, it's being driven mostly by some of the concerns in law enforcement, but it is what it is for us. So rather than belabor any of those things, because there's a lot in the blog. You can read the cases, and what I'd like to do is to talk about some of the cases that I really didn't have a chance to get into. And so let's take a look here at the let's see, the beyond the blog types of stories, because there was a number of them. And one of them involves a settlement out of Martinsburg, West Virginia, the settlement of a FLSA, or it was really a wage and hour type of a lawsuit. And I apologize if you see me looking off to the side, but I got my screen over there, and my computer won't let me move it to the front screen so I can kind of look straight forward and see it. But Billy Macarone, my colleague that covers the FLSA, has a really good post on this. So I don't have anything other than a link that's going to go out in my email tomorrow. But the $1.75 million settlement over the issue of holiday pay. And boy, it seems to me it took 3.5 years, and there was some appeals and different things for this case to finally wind itself down and get the settlement. But it seems like the city was fighting them tooth and nail, which is unfortunate. With wage and hour things, it's pretty much cut and dried. I mean, you can spend a fortune in legal fees trying to fight some of this stuff. But you do the math, you see if you made a mistake, you made a mistake. And, rather than on top of a mistake have to pay your legal fees, and then under the FLSA, you're going to end up having to pay the other side's legal fees as well. So, but that's an interesting case. There was a case out of Canada, Grand Forks, Canada, and it's one of those scenarios where there's been several lawsuits over something that happened there, and you may want to take a look at that one. But we got a firefighter who he sued the city, and he sued I believe a total of 4 colleagues, the chief, the assistant chief or deputy chief, and then a couple of his colleagues. And the headline has to do with the fact that he has dropped the lawsuit against his colleagues, and he's going forward against the department and the 2 chiefs. So another case out of Canada. The next one here is from the Leduc Fire Department. Big surprise here: sexual harassment and sexual discrimination allegations, and female firefighters alleging a culture of abuse in the lawsuit. So that's another one that again is consistent with one of our biggest areas of liability, which is gender discrimination and sexual harassment. The next most likely way we're going to be sued is race discrimination, and interestingly, the race discrimination, according to my data, we have about 2 lawsuits brought by minority firefighters to every 1 suit that is brought by a white firefighter alleging reverse discrimination. So we got about a 2-to-1 ratio there. But combined, those race discrimination suits end up, coming in number 2 in the most likely way that a fire department is going to be sued. And we've got a case, I believe it's out of LA, and I'm going to click through the link here. There's a lawsuit filed by a white firefighter, and he has requested the production of certain evidence from a black firefighter organization. And let me see which one. It's called the Centaurians. And so he has requested discovery from the Centaurians, and the Centaurians are apparently pushing back on that discovery request. So we'll see how that case shakes out. But that's another interesting case in the headlines. Houston is continuing apparently to have problems with their pay parity issues. They had succeeded in obtaining parity with the police. The Houston firefighters were able to get parity with the police, which, parity it's a good thing. It can be a bad thing. It can complicate negotiations, and some people think it's a good idea. Some people think it's a bad idea. I'm sort of in the middle here, but the mayor apparently is continuing to battle against that. And there's a number of arguments that can be made, legal arguments that can be made against parity. It really depends on the jurisdiction, but I think in a collective bargaining jurisdiction, I think one of the biggest arguments against parity is that it limits the ability of one bargaining unit to collectively bargain, because if you're going to come, if you're the firefighters and you're going to come in for a pay raise, and let's say for a lot of reasons you feel like you want a 3% pay raise, and they've only given the police officers 1.5, one of the city's bargaining positions is, wow, we can't give you a 3% because we've only given the police, so now you're stuck with a smaller pay raise. So it limits your ability to bargain. And some courts have found that to be grounds for declaring a parity provision unconstitutional or illegal. There's arguments that could be made in favor of it, against it, but apparently the mayor is continuing to fight that pay parity issue. Difficult to follow article out of Seoul, South Korea, where a firefighter was disciplined for what was called a poor fire response. Good luck. Take a look at it. It's just I like to include international things so that we know it's not just us. The problems that we face here in the U.S. are, any fire department, and I've met firefighters from all over the world, particularly when I worked for the NFPA. But met firefighters from Africa, from Asia. Went to dinner with the chief from Singapore and Jakarta and all sorts of parts of the world, and we're all facing in many respects a very similar type of challenge. So it's good to see international problems there. And then a couple of other suits. We got a problem with Pacific Gas and Electric. They've really been hammered. I believe they ended up in some sort of either insolvency or bankruptcy over some of the suits for starting wildland fires out in California. Some of the biggest fires out there were allegedly due to some of the electrical lines dropping or sparking and creating wildland fires out there. And so there's apparently some problems with residents harassing PG&E workers over the campfire settlements. Some of those cases had been settled. Another case, Baker Fire Chief, let me go actually to it, but chief from Baker City, and let me see here. Now I'm drawing a blank on what. Louisiana was accused of some payroll irregularities, criminal payroll irregularities, somewhere around $22,300. Payroll irregularities that he's being charged criminally with. So another unfortunate one. And then the last case involved a disciplinary matter out of Utah, where a fire captain had allegedly been recording teenage girls and distributing inappropriate child sexual materials. So it's something that I don't believe the fire service has an extensive problem with, but it's a societal problem, and it's something that all fire departments. It's all the more reasons why all fire departments need to have the ability to conduct an internal investigation, have the connections with law enforcement to sort of dovetail in when we become aware that we have someone that's has problems with pedophilia, I guess maybe that's the stumbling over it, but I hate to even use the term, but and I don't know, I can't say for sure that that's an issue in the Utah case, but certainly it's something that we have to wrestle with. We talked about it in my discipline class, and when we are not good at investigating, when we don't really understand the implications of Garrity, when we have officers that have engaged in other types of misconduct and then they become aware of a problem with a particular employee, they may be in a position where they can't report it because they know that if they report this firefighter for doing whatever it is they did, they know that they're going to get themselves in trouble, and you almost get into a blackmail situation. And it's something that a lot of officers don't think about until they're actually in that situation and they're in a position where they can be blackmailed. And I know my son's a police officer, and the first day of the police academy, they always admonish them about that, and then throughout the rest of the academy, and certainly as they get out into their chosen departments, the importance of not allowing yourself to get into a situation where you can be blackmailed. And we don't really do that when it comes to fire officers. Anyway, we don't tell them that, if you engage in misconduct and your subordinates become aware of it, and now your subordinates choose to engage in maybe even a different type of misconduct, now you're in a position where if you report them, you can get yourself in trouble. And that's something that I emphasize in my classes. And I think we've got to do a better job of doing that, getting that word out. So, but at any rate, that's sort of the wrap up here for the week of March 14th, 2022. Please, if you haven't already done so, please subscribe. If you like, click like. But I think right now the most important thing is we need to get another couple of hundred subscribers, and then we'll be able to be doing this on a more frequent basis. So that's going to wrap it up for another